The subject of meta-humor is something that I've seen pop up more and more over the years. Basically, it's the act of being self-referential. Cartoons have been able to use this over the years as a way of breaking the fourth wall, to make a joke either about the show itself or stuff going on in the real world. I think meta-humor can be really funny at times. It's a good excuse to be self-aware for a bit, and acknowledge your audience. Almost like they're speaking directly to you. But is there ever a point in which meta-humor can go too far? But what made me finally drop that rule and make a video about it? Well, let's start from the beginning, as it's something to do with the show's writing that I feel requires getting a general overview of what the show was, and what it was trying to be at the start of its run, compared to nowadays. Now, I didn't start watching the show until around the midpoint of season 2, and I loved it immediately. Its style of humor really resonated with me, and apparently a lot of other people too. Felt like the show was developing a bit of an ego. I'm not saying the titles because they're getting so convoluted at this point that I don't even remember what any of them are called. But I want to look past that. What a big game changer this was. And instead of endlessly speculating about where the series is going to be headed now after this, I want to focus on the writing and how through its use of meta-humor, it didn't manage to elevate anything happening within the episode, and instead caused it to feel it making me immersed or care about anything going on in such a huge series-shattering event. I'm worried about the future of the show, and this episode perfectly encapsulates why. By the way, speaking of huge, I just got this huge package. But when it comes to these types of jokes, I think it's always important to consider the context they're being used in. For example, don't put some dumb jab at the audience in a scene that's meant to be taken seriously. I think the reason it's begun to bother me so much in the most recent season is because of how different the show currently feels compared to seasons 1 or 2. It felt like a big finale. But when you're at a point where you feel like you've pushed things to its limit, where do you go from here? And that's when the sad truth set in. It was gonna be the worst. They just tried too hard to deconstruct themselves. So now we've just got two very depressing characters. They don't complement each other nearly as well. But beyond that, I find it impossible to feel connected to any of them, because nobody feels like a real character. They all come off like general archetypes that can be morphed into whatever the writer wants at any given time. I think a big part of that comes back to the topic of meta-humor.
You're right, it shows a lack of faith in their core concept.
Yeah, exactly. Wait, what? Serious stories? Dumb cartoon, bro. You actually expect it to be serious? How can you possibly be annoyed that doesn't take itself seriously? Yeah, how could I possibly think that? This isn't even a straw man argument. I literally got people telling me the exact thing. I had people genuinely telling me the whole, to be fair, you have to have a high enough IQ to understand Rick. The show has not been very subtle over the years about how much it dislikes serialized stories.
Right, no drama, keep it episodic.
But something unfortunate happened the one time they actually tried to tell a serious, serialized story. People loved it. People got super invested. Well, like they said, they're not into serialization, and you can really feel that hatred, because throughout the entire episode we are constantly reminded of this with tongue-in-cheek jokes towards the audience, about how much they don't like doing lore shit, and how they like to keep it episodic. It's effective because the characters themselves are taking things seriously. So it's just like we went through an episode that had no meta-humor, but now that they're talking about lore, they have a joke about it every fucking second. It's like they're dragging their feet in the mud and don't want to do it. The writing overall just feels lazier in the way they handle this dumb self-aware shit. One of them is a joke made out of a reference, and the other is just a reference. It feels like they just don't care anymore. If you don't want to do lore stuff, then I'd rather you just not do it instead of half-assing it. To talk more about this topic of how a joke can ruin a serious moment, I thought I'd invite YouTube personality Johnny 2 Salos to talk more about this subject, as on his channel he spent a lot more time analyzing the series than me. Take it away, Johnny.
Thanks, Mark. So this is actually something I've been thinking about for a while, and we determined that what is most frustrating about the show choosing to undercut serious or emotional moments with humor is just how effective the show can be when it doesn't do that. The show obviously loves to make self-referential and meta jokes, and it has since it started, but they've so often managed to balance that with these emotionally affecting sequences. Now, obviously I don't want them to do this type of thing in every episode. These moments work because they're a juxtaposition, and instead choose to poke fun at them. The reality is that a lot of the fans are actually really invested in these ongoing plot elements and the more serious aspects of the backstories, so when the show makes fun of that fact within the same moment that it's exploring them, it can sort of feel patronizing. So I'm not suggesting that the writers need to listen to the fans because they know better. I just wonder if some of these meta jabs and references might actually be detrimental to the stories they are telling, especially when they're undercutting major moments, but I kind of wish they were a little more willing to embrace their serious and emotional side.
So I'm definitely still going to be keeping up with the series to see where it heads from here, and I'm still a big fan. This was just me voicing some of my concerns with the way the writing was headed, and I hope they're able to get better about it in the next